Welcome to my hopefully comprehensive Fractal 40 guide. Before we dive into the topic, I have to make a little disclaimer. Some of the information provided in this video is already available in Lily's Fractal 40 guide on Reddit, but much too few people seem to actually know about it. A lot of players are farming Fractal 40, so they must have heard about this farming method somewhere, but the information about how to do it right apparently never reached the broad player base. And this issue is what I want to address in this video. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, Fractal 40 farm is a method to get pretty high amounts of gold by repeatedly beating the Molten Boss Fractal at Fractal difficulty 40. The most striking characteristic of this fractal is that it can be beaten in under 2 minutes. The process of this can basically be broken down into go down the ramp, kill the effigy, kill the ads, kill the first boss, kill the second boss, and enjoy loot. The prerequisites are naturally a well thought out group composition and capable players. As the clearing speed including lobby time can vary between 2 to 5 minutes depending on the actual group, it is more suitable to first calculate the gold earned in one run and then translate the number to gold earned per hour depending on the runs per hour. To quantify this number, I saved the loot from 100 runs. Aside from crafting materials, I got exotic insignias and inscriptions, which sell for more than 1 gold each, tier 5 dust, and a bunch of globs of ectoplasm. On top of that, every run rewards some +1 Agni infusions, 3 fractal encryptions, 2400 karma, and 12 fractal relics. Selling everything at the trading post yielded about 158 gold, which means the gold earned in one run amounts to 1 gold and 58 silver. However, considering the price fluctuation on the trading post and the fact that I sold my encryptions for 28 silver, whereas the price over the last month often dropped below 25 silver, it is safer to estimate the gold earned per run at conservative 1 gold and 50 silver. To put this into perspective, I also tried 2 other popular farming methods, silver wastes and gathering. Following a chest farm train for 1 hour and then earning back the bandit crests I spent by completing the Breach and Vine Breath event twice gave me 37 gold over the course of 1 hour and 55 minutes, which translates to 19 gold earned per hour. Of course I opened all the loot bags on a low level character. The current sweet spot for opening loot bags can be found at silverwaste.loyaltools.net. For the gathering method, I just farmed areas that, in my experience, have high amounts of gathering nodes. Decent spots are, for instance, Sparkfly Fen, Mount Maelstrom, Timberline Falls, Fields of Ruin, Blaze Ridge Steps, Iron Marches, Fireheart Rise, Snowden Drifts, Harathi Hinterlands, and Brisbane Wilderness. Selling the refined materials yielded 9 gold for 30 minutes of gathering, which translates to 18 gold earned per hour. In general, I recommend to farm on multiple characters, as the areas I just mentioned include rich veins that can only be harvested once a day on every character. To summarize the information we just learned, I put together a table with the GPH dependent on the runs completed in 1 hour. As you can see, there is a threshold where farming Fractal 40 just doesn't make sense, especially considering preparation time, dependence on other players, and breaks. So keep this in mind. A handy little trick even casual groups can profit from is the quote-unquote cutscene skip with bounty notices, which allows players to use skills during the video sequence. For the needed bounty notice, you have to kill some bandits, who for instance can be found in Queensdale at the Vale waypoint. Just kill the mobs until you drop encoded orders, which you can then exchange for the desired item. But attention, these encoded orders are time-gated and can only be dropped once a day per account. So if you need the item on multiple characters, get it on different days instead of farming bandits for 2 hours straight. Not like I would do that. Yeah. Once you have the encoded orders in your inventory, speak with Shining Blade Officer Raylan in Divinity's Reach, who will then give you a bounty notice. To skip the cutscene, you just have to spam click the bounty notice right when the video sequence is about to start. The map will then automatically open. Wait about 2 seconds before closing the map again. The user interface will then appear and you will be able to salvage gear, move and use skills. There are actually two moments where the bounty notice can be used. The first being when the agony is applied to the players, so make sure to spam click only after that. The obvious advantage of this trick is the possibility to pre-stack Might and Fury, precast Glyph of Storms, or instant CC. Before we look into group composition, builds and rotation, there are two things I want to point out that the average casual Guild Wars 2 player just doesn't seem to understand. First, the difference between bursts and consistent DPS. About 4 weeks ago I was looking for a Fractal 40 farm guild, and so I advertised myself in Lion's Arch map chat. For emphasizing that I was able to reach the standard burst DPS of 80k on the Molten Berserker, I was then laughed at. And people advised me to better apply to QT with my so realistic DPS. Yes, we all know and love Quantify's DPS benchmarks, but those are performed on a 4 million HP golem over the period of 104 seconds for the fastest rotation. The Condi Ranger, for instance, is listed at about 34k DPS. So how am I, as an at best average raider, able to reach almost 60k DPS after 14 seconds on the Demos encounter? There must be something wrong, right? No, this is the burst DPS I'm talking about. Strong skills naturally have long cooldowns, so if I use all my big spells in a short period of time, I will have a great damage output. But the following seconds will be equally less amazing, since my Meteor Shower, Dragon's Maw, Bonfire and so forth are on cooldown. In Fractal 40, the Molten Effigy is with 1.6 million HP the beefiest enemy, so we are talking about a very short time period to burst on every single enemy. This means we are interested in high damage output over a few seconds rather than prolonged fights, which makes the Quantify benchmarks kind of irrelevant for our purpose. This is one of the core criteria to select optimal group composition and builds. Second, the importance of instant CC. Most Guild Wars 2 players know break bars, but I'm not quite sure if all of them know the consequences of breaking said break bars. Just as a reminder, the enemy will be interrupted and stop current actions, which means they won't move out of AoEs, dodge, go invisible or attack, so that we can reach high DPS and Scholar uptime. On top of that, the control effect stun is applied, which means impact gear is the way to go. This effect also makes the choice of a fitting DPS profession incredibly easy. Lastly, the effect exposed is applied, which increases the damage the enemy takes by insane 50% over 5 seconds. 50%! I hope this makes clear why we want high burst DPS over just a few seconds. Our thought process for selecting a fitting group composition is similar to that in raids. There are 3 boons and several profession-specific buffs we'd really like to have, but of course we can't take all of them, so we have to narrow down our choices. There is, for instance, one skill that can single-handedly speed up the run by 20 seconds. The Mesmer's Portal. Instead of first killing the effigy and then running all the way up the ramp, still running, killing the ads, and then running all the way back down, still running, and still running. We can just use Portal. With the Chronomancer we just so happen to also satisfy our desire for quickness and alacrity, and on top of that the Chronomancer has insanely strong CC. Our next profession choice is just as obvious. The warrior's ability to stack might with phalanx strength and buff the group with banners and empower allies is just too good to pass on. But attention, we never ever want to see a Condi PS in Fractal 40. Not only need Condi professions time to wrap up high DPS, which is against our philosophy of high burst DPS, the Molten Effigy taking the longest to kill is on top of that immune to burning. These two reasons naturally also exclude all other condition classes in our selection process. For the last 3 spots there are actually 2 different possibilities. One Zerg Druid, for example, can buff the group with Spotter, Frost Spirit, Glyph of Empowerment and Grace of the Land. With 2 DPS classes for the remaining spots, it definitely makes for a strong group composition. However, this is not what I will discuss in this video. If you are interested in this setup, I recommend you to look into the aforementioned Lily's Fractal 40 guide, as it splendidly describes how to effectively use a druid. The group composition I prefer consists of 3 Tempest for the last 3 spots, as their burst DPS and integrated traits make further professions, in my opinion, completely redundant. To my knowledge, this composition was first introduced by Marco, the leader of our guild, so a big shout out to him. To give you an impression of the Tempest's superiority, I try to bring down the 1 million HP golem below 80% in the shortest amount of time possible with realistic Fractal 40 buffs and without food. The Tempest naturally was at the top spot with 6 seconds and 34k DPS, followed closely by the Dragon Hunter with also 6 seconds but 30k DPS. But this testing setup does not account for stunned enemies or enemies below 50% of their health. There is a reason why the Tempest is practically unbeatable in the Keep Construct encounter. With Tempest Defense, a 20% damage modifier against stunned enemies, and Bolt to the Heart, another 20% damage modifier against enemies below half health, KC as well as the bosses in Fractal 40 just get obliterated. Although I try to advertise optimizing your group when farming Fractal 40, there is another personal philosophy I like to follow: multi-purpose. I don't think you have to optimize your gear up to the last point of precision and power to effectively use this farming method. It is completely fine to use the gear you already own, like one for raiding, as long as it has mostly Berserker stats and you use the superior sigil of impact. But you should definitely not use a different type of weapon, for example Staff on Tempest instead of Scepter Warhorn. If you don't have an ascended version of a specific weapon, it is completely fine to use an exotic. Lastly, the group composition in this video doesn't run Druid, and we are therefore missing 150 precision from Spotter, which means we don't reach 100% crit chance. So if you want to min-max without buying extra gear, it is important to have high amounts of agony resistance, as the Offensive Fractal Potion adds another 30% of your agony resistance to your precision. For the following builds I will use raiding gear as the basis, and we will therefore still be short on precision. Just as a warning. The first important thing concerning the Tempest's build is the weapon choice. Many people believe Staff and Scepter Warhorn don't differ much when it comes down to burst DPS. But this is actually wrong. I tested both with the previous Golem setup and I couldn't reach a higher DPS than 28.7k with the Staff, as much as I tried. The Scepter Warhorn build, on the other hand, not only has incredible 34k burst DPS, but also offers great Might and Fury stacking capabilities, which make the Molten Duo plain easy. But if this doesn't convince you, I sincerely encourage you to make your own test and try the limits of the profession. As for the traits, there are actually only small but nonetheless important changes to the standard raid build. We want to run the aforementioned Tempest Defense and Bolt to the Heart, as the fights are simply too short to make Fresh Air or Chronomancer training a viable option. Plus, as we discussed beforehand, the traits are insanely strong. For utility skills we run Signet of Fire to max our precision, plus Glyph of Storms and Conjure Frostbow for insane burst DPS. The Elite is actually unnecessary, but Conjure Fiery Greatsword can be very useful if Firestorm happens to dodge out of the AoEs. Now concerning the gear. We preferably want to run full Berserker armor with Scholar Runes and Scepter Warhorn with Impact and Force Sigils. However, since we are missing the 190 precision from Chronomancer training, we have to make up for it by taking one of the weapons, one accessory and the backpiece with assassin stats and precise infusions. With this we reach exactly 2255 precision, which caps our crit chance, at least with Fury, Ban of Discipline and Spotter. This is exactly the quantified build for impact gear. For consumables we want full Fractal Potions, the powerful Potion of Slaying Scarlet's Armies, and a bowl of sweet and spicy butternut squash soup. The rotation can be best understood by looking into a somewhat optimal run. Although people will sometimes mess up, similar runs can realistically be achieved 90% of the time. I was first thinking about commenting the runs, but I feel like everything is pretty self-explanatory. Just remember to pre-cast overloads, avoid to interrupt the casting of skills, stack might in the cutscene, and you're ready to go.
so dead.
We've got company. Hey, Bruiser, you see what I see? I take that as a yippee. Let's see how colorful a smear we can make.
We can handle them. Spread out.
Those two don't look friendly, but absorbing the energy of its fallen form. Power waves off the chart. Be careful.
Let's try things my way. Double the tap.
Inferno! Cooling down.
As mentioned before, we won't ever run Conny PS in Fractal 40, and therefore the standard quantify power builds with Greatsword are the way to go. The traits remain completely unchanged, but it might be nice to explain the synergy. First, Forceful Greatsword. This trait not only increases our damage by 10%, but also provides might on critical hits, which will then trigger the Phalanx Strength trait, granting 1 stack of might to nearby allies as well. This trait also makes the utility skill for Great Justice incredibly strong, as it instantly applies 12 stacks of might to allies. Aside from the banners, we also take Headbutt, which together with the Chronomancer's Tides of Time can break every Defiance bar. Plus our adrenaline will be completely filled, so that we can instantly enter Berserk. For gear there are two different options: either run Scholar runes with Assassin stats on helmet, legs and the 2 accessories, with the rest being Berserker stats, or use Runes of Strength with Assassin stats only on helmet and legs. For the Greatsword we want Impact and Force Sigil. Both variants are viable, but Scholar runes are definitely a DPS increase. For consumables we again want full Fractal Potions and the powerful potion of Slaying Scarlet's armies. As for food, a plate of truffle steak might be a good idea, as we are short on precision, but a bowl of sweet and spicy butternut squash soup is fine too. For the run, just make sure to land every headbutt. You can even hit the Berserker while he is still invisible, but you have to position yourself properly. Don't stand too close or too far. Also remember to dodge before fights for the extra 10% damage, and cast for Great Justice with every headbutt, so the might doesn't run out before the fight even starts.
For great justice. Oh, we're so dead.
Let the storms rage!
We've got company. Hey, Bruiser, you see what I see? I take that as a yippee. Let's see how colorful a
For
smear
great
we can
justice. We can handle them.
Oh,
Spread out.
that explains the fight. Those two don't absorb the energy of its fallen form. Power waves off the chart. Be careful.
Let's try things my way. Double the tap.
For great justice. I'll destroy you all.
The Chronomancer is a little special, since there are many ways to play it and everything comes down to personal preferences. Also, as the fights are so short, only a little boon duration is needed to keep up quickness. For traits we run the standard Domination Inspiration build, since we use the Continuum split only once per run, and the shorter cooldown on shatter skills from the illusion trait line, as well as the increased damage for every active illusion, never gets relevant. Besides, the group distortion capabilities, shorter cooldown on signets, and damage modifier from Domination Inspiration are very useful for cooldown management and keeping the Scholar uptime high. For gear we could theoretically run full Berserker armor with Scholar runes, but since the Chronomancer is only a small percentage of the group DPS, I personally just use my Commander raiding gear with leadership runes. It really comes down to personal preferences. However, for weapons, a sword with impact sigil in the main hand and focus shield with 4 sigils in the offhand are mandatory. The focus is used to stack the adds, and the shield is very important for quickness since we don't run Well of Action. Instead we use Signet of Inspiration as expected, Portal and Well of Recall. The latter is especially important for proper cooldown management with Alacrity. For the Elite there are many different choices. For instance, Time Warp can be strong if Firestorm happens to dodge the initial stuns. But I personally just prefer to avoid that by using Signet of Humility. This skill instantly breaks Firestorm's Defiance bar, and we get a second chance to break the Defiance bar with our Tides of Time. As consumables we again want full Fractal Potions and the powerful potion of Slaying Scarlet's armies. For food I usually just use fried golden dumplings, but damaged food such as bowl of sweet and spicy butternut squash soup probably is the better choice. For the run you have to remember to adjust the portal entrance according to the speed of the group. Also make sure to hit the adds a few times after stacking them, as they will otherwise not give loot. Also use your wells between fights for cooldown management, and be especially careful with breaking Firestorm's breakdown. This guy can be seriously annoying otherwise.
So dead.
We've got company! Water! Hey, Bruiser, you see what I see? I take that as a yippee. Let's see how colorful a sphere we can make.
We can handle them. Spread out.
Nice one, Spike. Those two don't look friendly. Moving the energy of its fallen comrade. Power wave is off the charts. Be careful.
Let's try things my way. Double the pop!
That's quite a reward.
First, it often happens that Bram, being absorbed in his duty, pushes back all the enemies the Chrono just stacked. This is RNG, so don't worry about it too much. Just kill the adds as fast as possible and then walk back in the direction of the boss platform. Everyone will be teleported to said platform the moment agony is applied, but you can avoid another loading screen by simply being near the platform. Second, if you have cooldown problems, for instance with Signet of Humility on Chrono, or you have accidentally cast a skill in the previous run, you can just use the GG command in the lobby and your cooldowns will be reset. Lastly, stuff will go wrong in your runs, but this doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for decent clearing speed. I personally think the Guild Wars 2 community could use a little more ambition in the ranks of casual players. And where to better start than with farming gold? Am I right? Thank you for your attention. I hope this video was useful and informative. But before ending the video, I'd like to thank a few people who helped me understand different parts of the Fractal 40 farm. Lily, whoever you might be, thanks for bringing me into Fractal 40 farm. Mitro and Johan, thank you for your tips on running the Chronomancer. Vinci for clearing my misunderstandings with the Berserker. And lastly, Redog and Marco for giving my Tempest rotation the proper finishing. You guys are awesome. Now you may go. See you in Fractal 40.